Hello, everybody. Thank you so much for joining us for Skype a Scientist Live today. Today we've got a bit of an evening session, which is a bit of a change up for us. So thank you so much for being here. So today we're going to be joined by Wei. She's going to be talking to us all about healthy plants and a healthy planet. This is all part of Plant Week with in partnership with the American Phytopathological Society. So phyto, plant, pathological being like diseases, basically, society. So we're super excited to have Wei with us today and super excited that you're with us today too. So to start us off, Wei, would you like to tell us who you are, what you do, and why you like it?
Sure, yeah, thank you for having me on. I'm very excited to be doing this. I am a postdoctoral research plant pathologist with the United States Department of Agriculture. And so I work in Parlier, California, which is kind of like the Central Valley area. And our lab works on a bacterial plant pathogen called Xylella fastidiosa. So this bacteria infects a number of agriculturally important crops, ranging from grapes to almonds, citrus, coffee, just to name a few. And so my project in particular is trying to figure out some bacterial genes that are important for this infection process. So we call them like virulence genes. And also trying to find out more about how bacteria respond to different environmental stresses. So when they're infecting plants, they often encounter stresses from the plant, trying to get rid of them and things like that. And so the overall goal of these projects is to identify ways to help better improve like disease management strategies right now. And so in the Central Valley, we grow a lot of grapes for wine. And so our research unit has a focus on trying to control Xylella infection in grapes for just the growers in the region and things like that. And so let's see, why do I do what I do? Well, there's a lot of reasons. I really love research and biology in general. There's always something new to learn, and so plants are so important to not only environmental health, but human health as well. So like 80% of the food that we eat come from plants, and so obviously that's like a direct link between our health and plant health. So being a plant pathologist, I feel like I can contribute to keeping plants healthy and ultimately keeping humans healthy, I guess.
Awesome. Sounds good. So you said that this Xylella affects both grapes and almonds. I feel like those are so different as plants. I think of grapes as being like ultra juicy and almonds being about as dry as it gets. So what is it about this bacteria that can be so good at infecting such different stuff?
That's a good question. And so the bacteria doesn't necessarily infect like the fruit or the nut itself. It actually infects so plants have these things called xylems. So they use in their stems, they use xylems to transport water into the different tissues. And so the bacteria actually colonizes that part of the plant and then ends up kind of like clogging it up. So so when it does that, then the plant can't get any more water to, all the parts that it needs to get water to, and so it wilts. And so that's what the disease symptoms look like. You'll see like wilted leaves, like browning of like the leaves and things like that. And so that's like kind of how the bacteria start infection and cause this kind of disease in different types of plants, because all plants have xylems, and so that's its kind of mechanism.
Wow. So it's kind of like the bacteria gives the plants a blood clot?
Yeah, like if you can't drink water, water is essential to everything living, us. Like if you just no longer can absorb water, then yeah, you're gonna like slowly wither away. And in California, where it's always really hot, that's pretty devastating at times. Yeah.
Absolutely. Wow. Cool. So how do you treat a population of plants that you're trying to grow for crops and protect them from bacteria, do you like give them antibiotics like you would with a cow?
So that just depends on the bacteria. So for Xylella, it's actually kind of tricky. So the way that they prevent plants from getting it is they either just have to remove infected plants so that you can't infect like your neighbor plant or things like that. Another control strategy is Xylella is actually spread via insect vectors. So it can colonize or live in like the insect's like mouthpiece. So it's specific insects, not all insects, but so that's one way of controlling the spread. Is like sometimes if you are driving through different like orchards and you see like a net over some of the crops, that's like one way that they're trying to prevent insects from like landing on the crop and like trying to feed off of the crop, which is how it infects the plants. So for Xylella, that's how right now the control strategy is that.
Super cool.
Yep.
Awesome. So what originally got you interested, first of all, in science broadly, and then in plants, and then in bacteria in plants? Like, how did you go from just being a human to being...
Sure. Yeah. I mean, that's a long path. I feel like I didn't really like start thinking about careers and biology and stuff until probably undergrad. So I went to the University of Wisconsin-Madison for my undergrad, and they have a really great plant pathology department. And so I actually started off as a business major, which is totally different. And then I did an internship at the Science Museum of Minnesota on like the business side. We were doing marketing and things like that. And so, I didn't really love like business part of that, but I did love the science part. Like I got to go to the museum like every week and I saw all the exhibits and things like that. So that kind of got me like more interested in like the science part of things. And then, biology has always been pretty fascinating to me. I just feel like, like we as like living beings are like we just do all these amazing functions without even thinking about it. Like you see engineering people like designing phones and all that, and they put a lot of like thought into it. And then like, I think about like the cell and it just like does all this stuff without you telling it to. So, I mean, I always thought that was just amazing. And so, I mean, I thought biology was kind of like, that's so cool. And so in undergrad, I did a like research, kind of like an internship research in a plant pathology lab. And so that's kind of just how I got started in plant pathology. And that lab happened to work with bacteria, and I really, I started enjoying working with like plant pathogens that were bacteria, things like that. So that's kind of, I guess, my path to where I am today.
We've heard a lot of different paths into science, but I have to say you are the first person that we've talked to that said, I started in business and business got me interested in science. I love that.
Yeah, it's not like the most direct way, but like when you're younger and you don't really know exactly like what you want to do, like you kind of dabble in a lot of things, and that's kind of how it happened for me.
Totally. No, every path is so unique. It's just like, it's a great reminder for everybody that no matter what you like start to do, it's not like a life sentence, like
yes,
you can
exactly.
always change. You can always be learning new things and trying new things, and that's really, really wonderful.
Yeah, definitely.
Erin.
Oh.
So if anybody, I don't speak sign language, so I can't sign to anybody at home, but if anybody at
home
is the signing, we will figure it out to put it on YouTube after. We'll figure out a way to make that work. I don't know if any of the 6 folks who are here with us today need that. I wish I had a way of typing to everybody. But we'll sort of...
I'm not sure. Shoot.
It's okay. We'll if anybody has an issue, please let me know, and then we'll sort it out for the YouTube upload.
Okay. Sounds good.
Yeah. So cool. So do you, I know I asked this to Chelsea yesterday, but a lot of people ask me as a marine biologist working with squid, like, do you have, if you work with like marine life all day at work, do you have tanks at home? Do you have, I see you also have a house plant behind you. Do you have a lot of
Oh,
plants at home?
I do. I actually do have a ton of plants. You can't see them all in like the screen right now, but yeah, I feel like I acquire too many plants. But yeah, I love them. I love going to like nurseries or greenhouses and just like seeing all the different plants and things like that. So yes, I do have a lot of plants.
Cool. Very nice. So I guess the next question is like, what are like the big things we've learned about plants and bacteria, specifically like nasty bacteria, since you started? Like, what are things that you're maybe specifically asking about? And then what has gotten better since maybe, I don't know, even 200 years ago?
I mean, we're always learning about how plants and bacteria kind of interact with each other because they kind of do this dance where like a pathogen will infect a plant and then that plant will learn, like evolve to learn about like what the pathogen or bacteria, whatever it is that's infecting it, what the specific, I guess, like mechanisms are that the bacteria uses to kind of infect and proliferate in a plant. And so then the plant will start, adapting and getting what we call resistance to bacteria or virus and fungal infection. And then the bacteria will then learn that, oh, the plant is doing this. So it's like always, they're always changing and trying to like outsmart each other. Mm-hmm. And so like we as scientists are just kind of like trying to catch up and like, learn about what we're observing, kind of learn what they're doing, and then use that information to, help growers or help people out there, mitigate and control the spread of disease, because obviously that's very important for agriculture.
Totally. So how much communication do you personally or your lab have with people that are actively like practitioners, like people who are growing the plants and experiencing problems with this bacteria themselves?
Right. Yeah, that's a good question. So our research center does a lot with like interacting with growers and stakeholders, things like that, because a lot of our funding does come from people who have like a direct stake in like what happens with their crops and things like that. So the PI of our lab, so she's like the head of our lab, she does go out and like she gets to travel to different areas and collect samples from growers or nurseries that have Xylella problems. And then, depending on what they want, we do different types of projects, help them identify like strains of the bacteria, things like that. And so, yeah, it just depends on kind of like your project and also, what people need in the area. So yes, there is a lot of like direct interaction with people who do growing and stuff like that. So
awesome. So when you say you're doing experiments, like what do your experiments look like? How long do they last? Like, are you in a greenhouse dripping bacteria onto plants? Like, what are you doing?
Yeah, so I have different types of experiments. I have experiments where I am just solely in the lab working on like, molecular biology, where I'm like trying to, clone a gene into a bacteria or, delete a gene from a bacteria. But then we also have greenhouse experiments. So I just got done with a set of greenhouse experiments with grapevines. So we do like take different bacteria strains, in my case, Xylella, and we infect the grapevines, and then we watch like the disease progress. So every week we kind of rate them, and then, at the end of like the trial, you take your data and graph it and try to make sense of like what you're testing. So it really varies. Like when I work with bacteria, it's about a week because that's how long it takes Xylella to grow in the lab. And then with plant experiments, it can go up to like 3 months or longer, just depending on what you're trying to test.
Cool.
Yeah.
So let's say hypothetically, like you have all the money, all the resources, all the laboratories in the world.
Okay.
What question do you want to answer?
Wow, that's a loaded question. Yeah, there's so many questions out there that I would love to answer. Like, I had all the resources in the world. Yeah, just continuing with figuring out like how pathogens and plants, evolve with each other, and, just learning like a lot of the basic biology behind it, because that's very fundamental to a lot of the stuff that becomes applied.
Yeah.
So, like when you're, a lot of the stuff that we do sets up the foundation for people who are actually out there trying to find like the best management strategy for pests and things like that. So yeah, if I had a lot of funding, I would definitely want to continue doing like a lot of basic research to get those foundational, information like set so that people can use it to do more applied work, I guess.
Right. Could you tell us a little bit about like what is the difference exactly between basic research and applied research? And
Okay.
yeah.
Yeah. So I guess I know when they say basic research, people are like, oh, it's so
Easy,
simple
but
or
so hard. Yeah.
Yeah, it's kind of like, I guess what I would say basic research is just like research that you are doing to just gain a lot like more knowledge of like a system. So for us, it's like, learning about the different genes and what their functions are. Because like even in humans, we have so many genes that like we don't know what they do. And so like maybe this gene that you find out what it does doesn't directly like come up with like a new, product that people can buy or whatever, but you learn about it, and then later on people, more as you learn more, then you can use that information to get to what you call applied research. So like in agriculture, applied would be like if you developed, a novel disease management technique, whether it's, I don't know, like a spray or a different line of plant that is resistant to like whatever, you're looking for. So I guess that's kind of, like, the different types of research, I guess, is kind of like that. It's like more like foundational versus more like you're out there, like actually like, coming up with a product for applied stuff.
Totally. Yeah. So that's a really, really important thing to talk about, because I think a lot of people don't necessarily kind of understand the value of basic research.
Right. Yeah.
Because, so like, I know there was I think it was Jeff Flake in Congress or the Senate who had this like list of experiments that was funded by the United States government that he thought was silly. Like one of them was, and usually it's the basic research that like, you just pluck out one experiment. May sound completely ridiculous, but really it's trying to get at, like you said, like just the way things work. Like there was one that had shrimp on treadmills, which objectively sounds absurd, but they were trying to understand things that for all we know could become useful for fisheries management or biomechanics or any number.
Yes. Yeah. So, I think it's, definitely. I think it part of it is like on us scientists for sure to communicate that better to people, because if you don't know it and you just like write a proposal that says like, I want to test shrimp on treadmills, like, I wouldn't know exactly what the application is for that later on. But, if you're the scientist writing that proposal and it's like, hey, like later on, this information can be used to develop like, whatever useful, device, then it's definitely more like, you can sell that to like people and be like, oh yeah, that is important. So yes, for sure.
So tough when you don't, like when you're at the base level and you don't maybe know like what is that application going to be. When they were studying jellyfish at Friday Harbor up in the Pacific Northwest, and they found this like glowing jellyfish, they're like, we don't know, this is just cool, let's figure out what's going on. And now we use it for cancer research, and it's been hugely influential. So I am a big cheerleader for basic research. That's really basic research, exactly.
Yes, awesome. For sure.
So this is a silly question, but do you have like a favorite plant related fun fact?
Plant related fun fact. I guess I was doing a little like research today on edible vaccines, actually,
Cool.
which is something in development. So that's like things. So that basically they would engineer a plant to make vaccine. And so instead of getting like an injection, you would eat like this plant that makes, you know, the vaccine particle, and then that's one way that they're considering developing like vaccines to give to like a huge group of people,
Right.
because right now it's like it is hard to get everyone vaccinated, especially in poorer countries. And
Mhm.
so if they were to able to develop that where it's edible, it's like a lot easier to access and deliver to like a huge group of people. So if that ever like comes to market, I'd be super excited about it. Yes.
That would be amazing. I had no
Yes.
idea we were anywhere near talking about something like that. That's so cool.
Yeah, it is.
That's super cool. So audience members, like, please feel free to submit questions. You can do that by using the Q&A function in the bottom. Just type your questions in and we'll ask them live. Don't be shy, that we're here to answer your questions. So hopefully you send them in.
Ask away.
Yeah, absolutely. Cool. So let's see. So you talked about Xylella. Is it Lella or Lala? Lella.
Xylella, yeah.
Xylella. Um, so is like that one of the biggest pathogens in crops, or are there other bacteria specifically that
Um,
do a lot of damage?
Yeah, it depends on where you live, and like or like the geographic region. So Xylella is limited to like warmer climates.
Okay.
So for like Central Valley area of California and Southern California, it is a big problem, and like say grapes, because we are in like warm climate. But there are other like pretty important bacteria. In grad school, I studied agrobacterium, which is another plant pathogen, bacterial plant pathogen that infects different economically important plants. But there are a huge range of different types of bacteria. It just depends. Like in the Midwest, there's another bacterial wilt pathogen called Ralstonia.
Uh-huh.
And so that causes a huge problem in like potatoes and things like that. So yeah, depending on where you live, you're going to get different types of pathogens that are causing problems.
Cool. So I know in squid, some bacteria can be super, super helpful. Like what kind of, is there anything that bacteria do to help out plants?
Oh yeah, like bacteria, there are lots of bacteria that help plants actually grow. So plants have like a root system, and like the soil and microbes that are like living in that I guess area they're called the rhizosphere.
Mm-hmm.
And so bacteria that live in the rhizosphere oftentimes either help the plants acquire nutrients, or can help plants like fend off bad bacteria. And so like one example is a bacteria called rhizobium. So they form these little nodules on the roots of different types of plants, but legumes. And so then like plants need nitrogen as like an essential nutrient. And so these guys like help the plant like acquire this nutrient. And so they've done studies where like if you add the bacteria to these plants, and then you have like a control where it doesn't have it, and then they see how well they both grow. And the plants that have this bacterium grow a lot better and faster. So yeah, there's a lot of beneficial microbes to plants.
Awesome. One fun fact for anybody who's going to the grocery store with their parents, or you as an adult human are going to the grocery store, if you take a look at some of the roots at the grocery store, this is more common if you go to like an H Mart or like another Asian grocery store. Look at the roots. If you see like little, they almost look like teeny tiny pinkish potatoes, like on the roots of some plants. I forget what plant you would see it at that we eat a lot of, but you can, I don't know if it's alfalfa. In the alfalfa sprouts that you get in a container, they normally don't have them.
Okay.
But but some do. Anyway, so I studied symbiosis in squid. And so
Okay,
my
cool.
PI would teach a symbiosis course. And so he would go to the H Mart when he was
nice.
grads about rhizobia, and he would basically bring them in. So you could, I mean, it's so obvious.
Yes, for sure.
And if you can even go in your backyard if you have soil that doesn't have a ton of nitrogen in it. And I don't expect you to like know how much nitrogen your backyard has. But
right.
If you just kind of dig around and look, you can pluck up some plants and you'll see them just like popping on there. And it almost looks like a weird tumory disease, but it's really great for the plants.
Right, yeah.
That can be your fun thing that you do in your backyard this weekend.
Yeah, go outside, get some air,
Around, see what you can find, exactly.
Right.
It's super cool.
Definitely.
Do you like to go outside and look at wild plants too, in addition to your plants in the lab?
Yeah, I mean, when you go on a hike and you see like, the wildflowers outside or whatever is growing around, it's always very, very refreshing. And, sometimes I try to like find like the galls. So Agrobacterium causes these like big growths on trees and things. So like, every time I see one, I'm like pointing it out, but some people are like, what are you doing? But yeah, it is. Yeah, I like doing that for sure.
That's great. I think going in the woods with a biologist is the best because I know I go into the woods with my cousin who works at Comcast. She's like a businesswoman, and I'm like, look at this salamander I found. Oh, look at this. She's like, oh my god. But
yeah.
That's awesome.
Yeah, family definitely sometimes are like, okay, we just wanna hike, and like you wanna do all this other science stuff.
Yeah. Looking at slime molds and stuff. I found a great slime mold the other day. I was very excited about it.
Oh, nice.
Always look closely at the life around you, because if you just are going on a walk and looking straight, you miss so much.
It's for sure.
Yeah. Awesome. We got some questions coming in. Here we go.
Oh, cool.
Alice would like to know, what is your favorite plant?
My favorite plant. There's so many that I love. I don't know. Right now I'm really into succulents because they not for research reasons, but just because they're really easy to keep alive. And so I have a lot in my house. And in California where it's dry and you forget to water them for like a week, it's okay. So as of now, that is my favorite plant.
It sounds good. I like my vines up here because I always overwater my plants. So I'm like, I need something pretty hardy that can handle both overwatering and when I used to travel for work back in the olden times.
Right, I know. Who can remember that time?
The next question comes from Abigail. You mentioned that sometimes you test for different strains of bacteria. Is there any indication that the different strains affect the plants differently?
Yeah, that's a really good question. And that's kind of like an ongoing research project in our lab too. Not necessarily like my project, but we have a group of scientists that work together and stuff. So yes, different strains have, I guess, sometimes they have different genes, or their genes have different functions that, we don't yet know. And so depending on the strain, you can get different disease symptoms or disease severity. And strains also can infect different, different types of plants. Just, it depends on like how diverse they are. But yeah, that's why a lot of times when we collect samples, that we try to, distinguish the strains just to get an idea of like, is it one strain that's infecting this plant, or is it multiple strains, and like how diverse are they and things like that.
Cool. Do you ever use the identification of the different strains to figure out where the bacteria came from? Like if they want to know, did it come from the farm northeast or southwest of us? Like, can we figure out how the bacteria travels from,
Oh, sure. Yeah. I think, some people definitely do that, like epidemiologists, and try to track like, the spread of different strains and things like that. For us, like a lot of times we will go out and like collect samples from certain areas and then try to determine like which strains are in those samples. But yeah, you can track like the spread of disease depending on like strains. So if you didn't know, where your sample came from, you could try to test for the strain and then get an idea of like maybe came from this region because this strain is more prevalent there. So
Right.
yeah, for sure.
Cool. So I know most bacteria are really, really hard to cultivate in the lab. And so one reason that we like our little squid that we work on is that we can just like pluck the bacteria out, grow it in a tube, and then add it to squid who have never seen the bacteria before. Do you need a plant to grow your bacteria, or can you do it in a tube as well?
So Xylella is able to be cultured outside of the plant. So we have specific like nutrient plates that we can grow them on. So yeah, we are lucky that we can grow them in the lab and not only have the plant, which I know is not always the case for some people.
Yeah.
So yes, our bacteria, you can see them on the plate. And we work with them in the lab pretty easily, so it's good.
Awesome. So my ex-boyfriend worked on Rhizobium, and he would often have this fluorescent strains of bacteria and then look at the roots using microscopes. Do you use microscopes or anything to look at your work, or is it all kind of genetic analysis?
Yeah, we do like a variety of stuff. So sometimes we'll pluck like infected leaves and then, have them on a plate and see if like later on, like as the bacteria grow, if they have like any morphological differences, if you're looking at different strains. Recently I submitted some samples to get, it's called like scanning electron microscopy. So if you ever like look on like a science, like the magazine Science or Nature, and you see like a picture of like a enlarged picture of a bacteria inside of something, and you're like, wow, that looks like so cool. So I'm trying to get some images that look like that. But yeah, so I do a little bit of that work. Just trying to see like what the bacteria actually like look like when it's in like the xylem of plants. Because Xylella form this, what they call a biofilm. So it's like a layer of bacteria that adhere to like a surface. And that's one way that they kind of like attach themselves to things so that they don't just get like swept away. And so depending on like the strain or like if you have a mutation in the bacteria, that can affect like the biofilm structure. So I'm trying to get some images of bacteria in the xylem to see if like my different strains have like a different biofilm structure.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Biofilms are so weird and so cool. They make it really, really hard. Pathogenic bacteria that create biofilms, like I'm sure your plants experience, like make it really hard to get rid of them. Like that hurts us when we try to treat them with antibiotics. Like they create this like plaque kind of, and they call it exopolysaccharide. It's like stuff that's in between the bacteria that protects them, basically. And that's a real problem for medicine. We have in our bodies biofilms form, man, it is just really, really hard to get rid of it.
Yeah, it's bad if that happens, for sure.
Getting biofilms is so important for plants and animals. We've got a question from Helena. I'm a junior in high school, potentially interested in exploring this career path. What are your future goals as a plant scientist?
Wow, that's a good question. What are my future goals? I think I definitely want to continue doing research. I really love doing research in general because you're always learning new stuff. And so, you can be a research scientist in many different fields. So right now I'm in the government sector. USDA is part of like the federal government. And so that route, you can always be like a permanent scientist position where you run your own lab and you formulate different project ideas based on like the the goal of that station. So here in Parlier, our goal is like pretty much like grape oriented and pest control of things like that related to grape. But yeah, you can also do academia and be a professor in universities or community colleges, high school, things like that. Yeah, I don't know. There's a lot of different paths. I feel like as long as I'm doing something research related, I'm happy. And so, wherever I end up with that, we'll see. I feel like, yeah, I'm still learning what I like too. Every day, like you change a little bit or learn something new, and you're like, oh, I want to do that. So
awesome.
Yeah.
Cool. Cool. Okay. So if you have any more questions, please get them in, because we're going to initiate the final questions that we ask everyone at Skype a Scientist Live. So the first question that we ask everybody is, if you had the ears of everyone, ears and eyes rather, of everybody in the world, and you wanted to tell them one thing about plants, what would you tell them?
One thing about plants. I would say don't underestimate a plant. I think a lot of times people are like, oh, plant, like they don't really think about the importance of plants to, just life in general on Earth. Because I think a lot of focus, especially this year with COVID and everything, is human health related, which, don't get me wrong, is so important. But plant health, is I feel like plants are our primary source of everything. Yeah. So yeah, I feel like that, it's easy to walk on grass and not even think about it, or, eat an apple and be like, whatever. But yeah, all those things, plant derived stuff is just so essential to life. So I guess I can't emphasize it enough, but yeah, that would be what my message about plant importance is.
That's a solid thing for everyone to know. And then our second universal question we ask everyone is, you still have everyone's attention in the world, and you can tell them one thing about literally anything. It can be as big picture serious or something silly and small. Totally up to you. What do you tell them?
Okay. Yeah, that's good. Oh, wow. There's a lot of stuff to tell people, I guess. I feel like I would say keep an open mind about things that you're told, but also question everything. So it's there's a lot of stuff going on in the world right now, and it's just crazy. And you see a lot of crazy headlines, or people who, may not believe in all the scientific data and things like that. So I feel like it's important to keep an open mind about people who have differences in opinions than you, but at the same time, think critically and, question things that are told to you. If you read something that seems kind of weird, don't hesitate to try to find, something that backs it up, and things like that. I don't know. I feel like in the age of social media, it's easy to get misinformation and also want to argue with people who don't, have the same viewpoint as you, but, just, be a good person and try to, try not to, I don't know, just try to be better about, starting fights on the internet or something like that. I don't know.
Solid advice.
Okay.
That's great. Awesome. So is there anything that you'd like us to know about? Anything you'd like to plug? Places that we can find you on social media or elsewhere?
One thing that we do have at USDA are these internships for high school and undergrads, or people who are going into college. And so they're paid summer internships. You can apply on USDA's website. So if you just type in USDA internships, it'll lead you to the page. And so, this summer, obviously we didn't do it, but hopefully in the future we'll have it again. And so it's I don't know exactly how long, month or 2 month long internships where students who get into the program come to a lab, and they get to do hands-on research related to agriculture and things like that. Sorry. So yeah, so that's something that is a great resource.
Cool. Sounds good. All right. Well, thank you so much for taking the time to talk with us today.
Sorry, barks were great in the background.
I have also gotten deliveries in the middle of Skype a Scientist sessions. It's part of
Okay.
Sorry,
guys.
Yeah, so thanks for talking to us. This was super fun.
Yeah, of course, it was my pleasure. It was great.
Yeah, that's so great. Thank you so much.
All right. Yeah.
Thank you for signing for us. That was awesome. And we will see you all back here on Thursday, the 24th at 11 a.m. We're going to be talking about plant health to combat world hunger with Melissa Mulho. So I hope to see you all then. Get your questions ready, and thank you again for joining us. This was wonderful. I'll talk to you later.
Yeah.
Bye.
Bye.